It's time to spotlight the tech sector, especially since this week was pretty unbelievable. Huge selling on Monday, but the NASDAQ doing okay. In fact, up for the third month in a row, and certainly a great performer, not far off from highs. Stephen Dickens is with us, CEO, Principal Analyst at Hyperframe Research. Glad you're here because we've had to digest so much. It hasn't been for the faint of heart. We'll start with Monday. The DeepSeek impact, where we saw names like Nvidia and Vistra, some big selling, 10-20% move off, their levels.
Hey, Nicole, thank you for having me on the show. I think we've had more news this week than we normally get in 6 months. DeepSeek's emerged as a game changer in the AI landscape, reportedly sort of breaking the thesis around the Nvidia GPUs required to change these models, knocking 600 million off the Nvidia stock price, which is the largest ever in a single day. To put that in context, that's the same size as the entire Mexican stock market. So a huge move. I think people are asking, is this the Sputnik moment for US tech stocks? I don't think so. I think the timing of this for me was suspect. First couple of weeks of the Trump administration. All of us in the tech community have been talking about this week. There's a couple of things that stand out for me. This was a synthetic training run. If you did that same synthetic training run using ChatGPT 4.0, that would come out, based on some of the numbers here, $5 per million tokens. That alone comes to 75 million, not the 6 million that has been touted, that's broken the analysis here and really upset the market. Also, we're seeing prominent analysts like Dylan Patel at Semi-Analysis posting this morning that it was more like 50,000 Hopper GPUs. That equates to 1.3 billion rather than the 2,000 that was originally mentioned. So I think as we dig into this, some of the news looks interesting. I don't think that the initial challenges that we saw Monday are going to be structural and for the long term.
All right, so somewhat, I won't say fake news, but, it just wasn't exactly what it seemed on Monday. There's also a feeling that we will still need energy and all of that. So some of those energy names are coming back. Nvidia is still regarded as a real winner. That's been coming back. But the big picture here, when you talk about the Sputnik moment, you did see the USSR at that time get ahead, but then the US had its answer. That was in 1957, had its answer with Explorer 1 the next year, right? And so it's all neck and neck. I think in the end, with the CapEx spend that we've seen from U.S. companies, does that change, or are they still on track for the big win or to be AI leaders? You saw Meta and Amazon and Microsoft and, Apple less so. But are U.S. companies still well positioned, and which ones?
So I think Nvidia is still making the fastest chips. We're still going to need those. We're still seeing significant CapEx coming through. You look at the big spend numbers that we're starting to see, Satya Nadella doubled down on his 80 billion CapEx, saying he's good in a tweet earlier. If you look at the big players in this, the big players, the Googles, the Microsofts, the AWSs, those big tech vendors are reconfirming their CapEx. And some of the numbers that we're seeing put those CapEx numbers at north of 300 billion by the end of the year. Those names that are going to benefit.
How names do you have? You have Marvell, Broadcom, AMD. Also,
those are going to be the winners, Nicole.
All of these winners: Google, Microsoft, AWS, Nvidia, and the other three that I just mentioned from your notes. All probably winners.
Yeah. So obviously we took a blip. Early part of this week, the market's obviously rebounding. Those names I mentioned, Google, AWS, increasingly Oracle getting into the dialogue. We'll get onto that with Stargate and Microsoft. They're all confirming their CapEx spend. The big winners out of that are going to be the likes of Nvidia, obviously capturing the lion's share, but also Marvell, Broadcom, AMD also going to be winning as a result of those continued capex spends. Then we're going to see the likes of Constellation Energy and those on the backside also winning from the energy consumption required.
Quick thought on Stargate. We had 3 companies. You had 100 billion. It's supposed to go to 500 billion. Does that seem on track? Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think the big winner here for me out of this is Oracle. I think they're starting to become that 4th hyperscaler. I think this is going to be a huge tailwind, particularly again for Nvidia and some of those other names I mentioned. AMD part of that alliance as well. So and ARM. So we're going to see some of those other pieces come through. I think the other news I'd mention, and I hope we get to it, is some of the stuff I'm seeing coming out of the DOJ around blocking the acquisition of HP by HP of Juniper. That's not on trend for what I'm seeing from the administration. Hopefully that's a hangover and we'll see that play out.
Yeah, and that was my next question, to tell me your thoughts on this. This was supposed to be more of a business-friendly administration, more mergers and acquisitions likely to go through. So maybe it's just a hiccup, to your point. Why is it important for HP to have this acquisition of Juniper? I mean, do you think it is, in fact, this is a $14 billion deal. Is it important that it happens?
It's important both structurally for the market within networking. We've seen Cisco dominate here. There's a number of players. The DOJ's got its math wrong on the market share. I read through this and have spoken to a number of players. I was chatting to HPE last night about this. Their feeling is that the numbers and the analysis in the DOJ's suit are just plain wrong, and they map with my understanding also. I think the other piece is there's a national security dynamic to this, Nicole. Huawei in some of those emerging markets has established itself as a really strong player. And the US, if it wants to protect its interests, needs another credible player alongside Cisco to go and win in those emerging markets. We're talking Africa, we're talking Latin America, we're talking the Middle East and the Far East. Having a big global name in a combined HP and Juniper is going to be vital for the security interests of the US.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that aspect, along with Cisco systems. Is that what you're saying?
Well, This is an inflection point in AI. We're at a huge build-out stage when it comes to data centers. Networking's a key part of that dynamic. We need a couple of big players. We've got Cisco, fantastic company, market leader. Having the combined HP and Juniper would be a really strong proposition for Team US when it looks to compete in the market.
Great. And Ashley, I'm making my notes because that's important. Stephen Dickens, good to see you, CEO and Principal Analyst at Hyperframe Research. Thank you.